What is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Saturday afternoon edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I am your host, Josh Harris. Yesterday is, as we like to call in the industry, a write-off. The Devils got blanked by Dan Vladar. They only put 21 shots on goal. Absolutely pathetic performance. We bashed the Horvat line. They nuked. You know what I mean? It just wasn't. Sometimes that's just the way the cookie crumbles. Nikolai Ehlers had a 4-point game. Nikolai Ehlers also had a hat trick, which is weird because all of his goals came at even strength. And I think there was one total assist on them. So it was just a wild slate.
Yeah, I was gonna say I had a late New Jersey stack, and as soon as Nikolai Ehlers scored that hat trick, and he scored the hat trick before the Devils even hit the ice, I was like, well, that slate's over.
Yeah, I mean, he was surprising, not super surprising that he was over 20% in some contests because it was a very good power play spot, but that just, I mean, you could overcome a one-off Ehlers, but then Winnipeg won and Morrissey scored a couple goals. And that was just that. If you had Winnipeg, that's great for you. If you didn't, you're just closing the laptop. You would have needed an unbelievable performance from the Devils to fight for a min cash. I had Levi anyway. He didn't even play that bad. His defense kind of let him down, but got another slate here tonight. It's a doozy. Some chocolate spots.
We had a couple pretty big winners last. Well,
right.
Not massive winners, but good winners last night too. Oliver Atticus, Ollie, took down the $5 for $5K. Congrats to him. Always nice to get a takedown in the first month of the season. So huge shout out to Ollie. And then AM Jennison had a really good night in the mini max in the hit check as well, going like 18x. So a couple pretty good nights in the chat. Always love to see that. Hopefully we can get some more good nights here on this 7-game slate.
Yeah, I forgot about those guys. Sorry about that. Ollie messaged me yesterday. He just got back from Vegas and he's sick. He's like, those heavy mouth breathers. So he went out and got some tea and some Lipton extra noodle soup. If you don't know what that is, go get it. It is elite. But yeah, congrats to Ollie and AM Jennison. Really good nights. We do love to see it. As we always say, we love to start the show talking about us winning, but if we can't, we like talking about you winning. Because just loading into a show after everyone just gets train wrecked is never ideal. Frostback is on time for once. We're going to go play the lottery after the show. What a great day. 7-game slate. Let's talk about it. Before we do, just want to remind you guys that if you are not premium and you do want to go premium, you can click the link in the chat. Use promo code Stochastic15. That'll get you 15% off your first week or first month of an NHL subscription. Also, if you're just tuning in for the first time in a while, we had a Stochastic member win the NFL Millie Maker on Sunday. Rick, he sat down with Laffy. If you're interested in checking it out, it's on YouTube. But to celebrate, if you click the link in the chat, use promo code MILL, that's MILL, you can get 30% off any NFL subscription. So check that out. Appreciate your guys tuning in, your support, your likes, your just everything. We love to see it. People talking good about Lipton extra noodle soup. Great day. Great start to this day. Let's get into the slate. Seattle Kraken with a 3 total. Heading into Ottawa, the Senators have a 3.4 total. There are a bunch of 6.5s on this slate. This one is not getting a lot of ownership. And I'm kind of very interested in this game. I kind of want to be interested in both sides. The issue is the only line that kind of stuck together in their last game is McCann, Eberle, Beniers. Montour is back. I think missing Montour was a big reason they kind of got ran over by Toronto. That and they kind of suck. But The issue that I'm running into is that Montour is not on the power play unit with Beniers, Eberle, and McCann. It's Riker Evans. And the Montour unit is the better power play unit, and this is a pretty good power play spot. I just don't want to use the Montour unit because it has Chandler Stevenson on it. Like, there was a couple seasons ago on Vegas. He had a very, very good season. But like, he's heavily reliant on hitting the score sheet, right? And the other night, it wasn't the Toronto game. It was a couple games ago. He had
it was Montreal.
What?
It was Montreal.
Yeah, Montreal. He had 4 assists, 1 shot on goal, and 0 blocks, and all 4 assists were secondary. You know what I mean? You have to run kind of hot with him. Like, in a nutshell, 5-on-5, I like McCann, Eberle, Beniers at 16K, but they're only getting 17, 18 minutes. There's other lines in that price range in decent spots that get way more ice time. So Seattle one is fine. Honestly, like a one-off Montour, and we'll get to defenseman at the end, is probably how I will play Seattle if I choose to. My interest is on the Ottawa side here. This is another good power play spot, and Ottawa honestly has one of the best power plays to start the season. It's a pick your poison type deal. I tend to go to Stützle, Tkachuk. I know Stützle isn't shooting as much, and Grieg isn't on the top power play, but 18-3 is still fine. They have a 9% top 2 stack, a little bit under 5% projected ownership. There isn't a Seattle line defensively that really worries me. And they have a bad penalty kill. And Ottawa has a good power play. If you want to go to Batherson, Norris, Giroux, they've been very, very good to start the season. You'll save 2,700. They still have a little bit of positive leverage. They're a little bit higher owned than the Ottawa top line. But, I tend to go to Brady Tkachuk, who's their best player, and 18-3 is fine. It's not like they're 21-7 or something like that. So I think both of the top 2 lines in Ottawa are in play. It's a preference for you. My preference is the top line.
Yeah, I'll just start quickly on the Seattle side. Like, I kind of agree with you. I think the only line that I have real interest in for Seattle is that McCann, Eberle, Beniers line. As you mentioned, 16K, not coming in with any ownership. Like, there are some playable lines in that range that we'll talk to later, but any of them, that are really at the top of the want to play list, let's call it. They're carrying a lot of ownership. So this would be a low owned spot that, if you're 20 maxing 150, you'll probably want some Seattle. Like, it is a good power play spot for Seattle, but as we mentioned on the show yesterday, like, the Sens just aren't taking very many penalties. Like, that's one of the problems here is, like, Ottawa for years was one of the more penalized teams in the NHL. Last night, they only took 2 penalties against the Rangers. On the season, they're taking the 6th fewest penalties in the league, only 2.7 power play opportunities given up per game. And Seattle, especially with Montour back, is going to split the power play unit. So if they only get a couple power plays, it might literally be like maybe 2 minutes of ice time on the power play here tonight. Like, it's just not a lot. Ottawa doesn't have a very good PK. It can be taken advantage of. The problem is, like, you really have to make the most of your opportunities. Funny enough, I mentioned on Twitter this morning, Jordan Eberle, I think, has been one of the more underrated players over the last couple of years in the league. Like, his impact on goal scoring has been really, really vital to any offensive success that the Seattle Kraken have. And I was looking at some tracking data earlier today. He has over doubled the assists on teammate scoring chances that Beniers and Stevenson have combined. Eberle has been, really, really important to McCann's success in the early parts of the season and to McCann's success generally over the last few years. I do like that Seattle top line. Ottawa is on the back-to-back. There aren't any real matchups concerns here, especially if they send out Travis Hamonic against McCann and Eberle. And there are a couple super expensive defensemen on the board tonight. So maybe you do want to play two lines in that, 15 to 17K range. Like this would be one that I wouldn't have a problem playing. It's the only line that I would really want a full stack. Other than that, I'd be looking, a one-off Eeli Tolvanen, I think is always in play for Seattle. But yeah, that's about it. The Ottawa side is a little bit more interesting. They do have the higher total. It is a good power play matchup. Even Seattle's taking more penalties than Ottawa so far this season, which is not something that you'd necessarily expect. The Ottawa power play has been good. They're riding a little hot by shooting percentage, but it was only a couple of years ago that they did have one. It was like a top 5 or top 6 power play in the league. Last year, it kind of cratered. And I just wonder how much Stützle's arm injury, because he played with an arm injury basically all season and was pretty much useless on the power play. And I wonder how much that factored into it. The power play has looked a lot better this season. Tkachuk and Grieg have generally played well together whenever they do get their limited minutes. Over the last couple seasons, about 135 minutes together, 17 and a half high danger shots per 60. That's very high. League average is at about 11.8. So they're generating a lot. A lot of it is Tkachuk just going to the net, and as our buddy Matt Moody likes to say, just slamming pucks into pads. But they do create pretty well offensively. I agree with you. I do like Ottawa 1 here. Thing is like once you get up to that expensive price range, like there are a number of lines that I do like in that price range here tonight. They are one of them. I have no issue playing them. It is a good power play spot. I might be tempted to go back to Ottawa too. I know they kind of fell on their face last night. I mean, last night Igor Shesterkin,
man.
Yeah, Igor made then that one save he made off Giroux, the glove save, and then he picked his head up and looked at Giroux and smiled at him. I was like, man, they're not. I was surprised they got one bat past them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that happens. But as you mentioned, they have been playing well this season. 11.9 high danger shots per 60. That's above the league average. 3.5 goals. Like there are some nights where Giroux's playing like 21, 22 minutes, even though he's not on the top power play unit. So it's one of those things, even though it's broken correlation, because it's only Batherson and Norris on the top power play. Giroux will be nights where Giroux has the most ice time of any Ottawa forward, just because they use him so much in all 3 situations, empty net. Sometimes they double shift him, like those types of things. So I honestly think I kind of have interest in going back to Ottawa too. But for me, it is the Ottawa top 2 lines that I'm more interested in than Seattle. The Seattle top line is the only one that's really, I think, worth full stacking here tonight.
Yeah, and like the Suns played really well last night. They put up 41 shots. They outplayed the Rangers badly. They just ran into a hot goaltender. That happens sometimes. I think, going back to them is a pretty interesting idea on the slate. Buffalo Sabres, the 3.2 total. How? I'm not really sure.
I mean,
it's Detroit.
I know how.
Yeah. Heading into Detroit, the Wings have a 3.3 total. Yeah, I know how, but I'm just mad at the Sabres right now. Tage Thompson looked really, really good last night. He just did everything but score. You kind of hate those nights when you play those players, when the beat writer's like, he's all over the ice. He's done everything but score. And then Jake will share the tweet in the chat, be like, any fantasy points for all over the ice? And you just want to throw yourself down a flight of stairs. But, he looked really, really good. The issue is they took Peterka off that line in the game yesterday. It's a back-to-back on the road. We don't know what the lines are going to be. It was Levi and net, so it's going to be Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen tonight more than likely. Detroit has flip-flopped Raymond and Kane. Let's play musical chairs. Who cares? That line is fully correlated. Larkin, DeBrincat, Kane. It's a pretty good spot. They are coming in with a lot of ownership, 13.8% top 2 stack, 15.9% projected ownership. I think they are perfectly fine at that price, at that ownership. Will I get to them? I don't know. There's a Pittsburgh we'll talk about, Nashville, there's Vegas, there's Vancouver, there's Colorado, there's Toronto. There's Ottawa. You know what I mean? There's so many playable lines here tonight that, like, do I really want to play chalk Detroit on this slate? I don't know, but like, they pretty good spot going against the Sabres back-to-back on the road. So at that price, I'm in. I don't really want to play Confer Cop Raymond. Like, no. Like, Raymond one-off, I won't say no to. Don't really want to play Confer Cop. That's about it on the wing side. On the Buffalo side, if it is Thompson, Tuck, Peterka, I'd have interest. Just because the wings are hot garbage too. Like, this is a battle of just hot garbage. The problem is they are expensive. If that is the case, 19.8. There are other lines that I'd much rather play at that price range. But in MME, with the positive leverage, I'm good with that. I don't have an issue going back to Cousins, McLeod, Greenway as a filler. Cousins scored his first goal of the season. That's the only thing he did yesterday. But he did play 18, 19 minutes. I don't mind them as a filler. I think my favorite line in this game is Detroit 1. It's just a matter of if you want to eat the ownership.
Yeah, I'll start on the Buffalo side quickly. You mentioned Peterka getting taken off. It was in the third period. They took him off the top line. They had a couple different guys join, but it was mainly Jason Zucker that got some run on the top line for Buffalo. I find that kind of interesting for this reason is like if you take off Peterka and put on Zucker, you still get 2 out of the 3 guys on the top power play unit, right? And it knocks 1,900, I think, off the price of the stack. So all of a sudden they go from 19.8 to 17.9, and they're only $900 more expensive than Detroit. And you, like I said, you still get 2 guys on the top power play. Now, I think Peterka, especially at this point of Zucker's career, is the better offensive player. But this is in a matchup where I'm super concerned about Buffalo. Detroit has looked bad this season. They've looked particularly bad on the penalty kill. On the PK so far this season, giving up the 5th most high danger shots against per 60 minutes at 5-on-5, 2nd most goals against per minute at 5-on-5, at 4-on-5, 2nd most goals against per minute at 4-on-5. It's not like this is the Islanders either, where the Islanders aren't taking any penalties, so it's saving them some goals against. Like, Detroit is about league average by power play opportunities given up per game. And Buffalo, like, for what it's worth, like, they started, like, the Sabres started, I think it was 8 straight games to start the season without a power play goal, like something like that. They've now scored a power play goal in 3 straight games, and they're generating a lot on the power play. I think that's pretty important to note, is that Buffalo top power play unit is generating over 60 or basically over a shot per minute, which may not sound like a lot, but if they do that for an entire season, they'd be one of the top 5 power plays in the league. So I have a lot of interest in Detroit 1 here, or in Buffalo 1, sorry. Especially if Zucker's there, just because it saves you so much salary for a guy that will still be on the power play in a pretty good power play spot. So if Peterka's there, I have no issue using them. They're a really good line. You know, with Peterka there, they're at 5.4 goals per 60 so far this season, shooting like 15%, which is hot. So, you know, they're probably more like a 3.5 goal line. But if Zucker's there and you save 1,900, not only will I think it'd probably be a low-owned combination because it's something that we won't know until lock, but it's a lot cheaper as well. So I do like, as long as Zucker's on the top line, I really do like that Buffalo top line. You know, like you said, if you want to go back to Buffalo too, I think that's fine as well. Like McLeod and Greenway have been generating well, 12.6 high danger shots per 60 when they're on the ice together at 5-on-5. You know, like you said, Dylan Cousins finally scored. God, I mean, that going into that game, I think he had 32 shots without a goal or something like that. It was nuts. But it's Buffalo 1, like I said, especially with Zucker, if he's on the top line. That really interests me. The Detroit side, like, oh my God. You know, we've said it repeatedly on this show. Like, if the top line is going as it was last year, they're probably a $20,000 line. Now, obviously, the top line isn't going as they were last year. Detroit is dead last dead last in the league in high danger shots per minute at 5-on-5. And like, it's not even close. They're like 15% worse than the next worst team. Like, they're not generating anything. Dylan Larkin has one high danger shot attempt at 5-on-5 this season. He has the worst high danger shot to shot attempt overall ratio of any forward in the entire league. Any forward with at least like 75 minutes played. It's been beyond abysmal. What could save them here tonight is what could save Buffalo, and it's the Buffalo top line offensively is the same thing for the Detroit top line. It's that Buffalo's penalty kill is not very good. They're also at about 3.2 times shorthanded per game so far this season. They've given up 9 power play goals against in 11 games. It is a back-to-back on the road for them. The Detroit power play has been the one thing that's been kind of half decent for them so far this season, other than their goaltending once they got rid of Ville Husso. And that's what makes me kind of interested in Detroit. But here, the thing is like I said, that Detroit line is coming in 16% projected ownership at $17,000. And if Jason Zucker's on the top line, they're only that Buffalo line's only $900 more expensive at probably a third the ownership. Like, I would just rather play Buffalo 1. I have no issue playing Detroit here. They do have a 3.3 total. It is a good power play spot. They are perfectly correlated. It's just, if they're similarly priced with similar top 2 stack projections, and I can get one at a third the ownership of the other one, I'm going to take the one that is considerably lower owned, and that's Buffalo. So Buffalo 1 is really my main target here. Detroit 1 is fine. If you want to I think one-offing Lucas Raymond or something like that is okay as well. But it's really the Buffalo side, particularly the top line, especially if Jason Zucker's there, that I have interest in.
So you're saying there's positive regression coming for the Wings.
I mean, I think you have to be playing well to expect positive regression, and boy, they're not playing well.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't even looked. Like, there's the numbers, and then there's the eye test. They look like ass with the eye test, too, but they're cheap in a good spot, and that's what tickles the fancy. Montreal Canadiens with a 2.9 total. Heading into Pittsburgh, the Penguins have a 3.7. Montreal didn't have morning skate. I was hoping we'd get some information from Marty St. Louis at his noon press conference. The only thing he did was confirm Montembeault. Thanks, Marty. We don't know if Emil Heineman's going to be up there. It could be Slavkovsky. It could be Doc. And it's kind of important, right? Because, like, Pittsburgh kind of sucks. And Montreal has a 2.9.
There are a lot of bad teams playing tonight.
Yeah, this is just a bad slate. Weirdly enough, 2.9 is one of the second lowest road total on the slate, which is insane. They're monster road totals here tonight, but Pittsburgh's just not a good defensive team. Their one saving grace is they have a good penalty kill. Not that Montreal's power play has been anything special. So you'd have to attack Pittsburgh 5-on-5. There isn't a line that really worries me, but again, we just don't know the lines. Cole Caulfield's super expensive at $7,700. Suzuki, like, if it's not Heineman and Slavkovsky, like, you're getting up into the Pittsburgh 1 price territory. You know what I mean? And that's a bit worrisome. I would have to see the Montreal lines. There might be, like, if Kirby Doc is up on that top line, I'd have some interest. If Slavkovsky's up there, I'd have some interest. But if it's Heineman, I don't think I would have interest at 16-3. I'd rather go elsewhere. The Pittsburgh side, again, like, this is a one-line team, and it's the question of what you want to do, right? They're 19,200. 24.8% top 2 stack, 20.3% projected ownership, right? It's a very, very good spot, 5-on-5 and power play. They have the second highest total on the night besides the Vancouver Canucks, who are playing the Sharks. You know, even when they ran into Lucas Dostal the other night, they beat them in overtime. They had a ton of shots. Crosby scored twice, and Dostal's been playing out of his mind. Sam Montembeault gave up like 9 goals on 4 shots the last time he was in between the crease, but this is a very good 5-on-5 and power play matchup. I don't have issue going back to Pittsburgh 1 here. Again, it's a personal thing. If you want to eat their ownership at 20%, there are ways to get different on the slate. I don't know what I'm going to be doing in my single entry, but they're definitely on the short list, so I'm fine with them. You start going down the lineup and you see Lars Eller, Drew O'Connor, Valtteri Puustinen projected for 8%. That's just a absolute no for me. So really the only line I have interest in this game is Pittsburgh 1. And if we get late news on a decent Montreal 1, I would consider it.
Yeah, this is another one of those games where I'm struggling. The reason to not play Pittsburgh 1 here tonight is ownership, right? Top 2 stacks has that Pittsburgh top line at 20.3% ownership, 24.8% top 2 stack percentage. There's a pretty good chance they're the highest owned line in the night. There's also a very good argument that Pittsburgh 1 is in the best spot of any team on the night, right? Montreal's top line, okay. League average high danger shot attempts against per 60 is at about 11.8. Both of Montreal's top 2 lines are over 20 against per 60 at 5-on-5 so far this season. Both their top 2 lines are like 60% worse than league average defensively. They are getting their asses handed to them. I don't know if it's necessarily the forwards or the defensemen. I don't have a lot of faith in that blue line either. The cause is almost irrelevant because Montreal is basically running back the same lineup. I think they're taking out Barron for Jack-Eye, and that's basically it. They're just getting their brains beat in at 5-on-5. And we don't have a huge sample with Malkin and Crosby, obviously, because they don't play a lot together. But I was noticed over the last 2 seasons, whenever they do play together, Pittsburgh generates 25% more high danger shots than when they're apart, or more than league average. Sorry. So they do generate very well because they're all stacked on the top line. We saw it the other night. Like they're all probably going to play like 20 to 22 minutes. It's hard not to play Pittsburgh here. And the thing is like in single entry, I bet like there might be contests where they're like 30% owned because they do have a monster 3.7 total. It is a concentrated top line. I know Montreal's penalty kill has looked like good on the surface. What I will say is that Montreal's penalty kill has been largely saved by their goaltending so far this season. Montreal so far on the PK so far this season is a fringe bottom 10 team by high danger shots against per 60. They take a ton of penalties. They're at 3.8 times shorthanded per game. League average is like 3.2. So, they're about 20% worse in that regard. So Pittsburgh might actually get some power play, like a good number of power play opportunities here tonight. The Habs are terrible at 5-on-5. The only real reason to not play Pittsburgh 1 here tonight is ownership. And if you're not worried about ownership, and honestly, I'm not super concerned about it, just because there are a bunch of lines like across the slate in that like 11 to 13K range that we'll talk about later, 11 to 14 even, that I think are very playable. And it's not like that Pittsburgh line is priced at like 22.5 or something like that, right? They're under 20K. So even at like 30% ownership in some single entries, I really have no problem playing Pittsburgh 1 here. No interest in the depth. On the Montreal side, like you said, we'll have to see what warmups look like. I don't really want to play that top line if Emil Heineman's there. He is, if like as a Montreal fan and somebody that pays pretty close attention, I'd like to think to this team. When I look at the list of wingers that probably should be on that top line, I don't know if Heineman's in the top 5, and there's only 10 other forwards to pick from. So like I've never thought anything of him as a prospect. I can't imagine he's going to be there on the top line. If they go back with Slafkovsky, it's something I might be interested in, just because they're going to be so low owned. But then you're starting to get fairly expensive, right? Because Caulfield is 7,700, Slafkovsky's 5K, Suzuki 6K. Then you're running up to like 18 grand, and at that point, like I'd probably just go play Ottawa instead. You know what I mean? So, I Caulfield one off I think is fine. If you're playing a 20 max and we get late news that Slafkovsky or Doc is on the top line and you want to get one or two Montreal in, I think that's fine. I just think there are other lines in that if Slafkovsky's there in that 18K-ish range that I would rather play.
Yeah. Toronto Maple Leafs, they 3.4 total. Heading into St. Louis, the Blues have a 2.6. Toronto 1, priced very similarly to Pittsburgh 1. They're coming in with half the ownership. Matthews, Marner, Nyes, 19,700, 19.1% top two stack, 12.6% projected ownership. Nylander, Tavares, Pacioretty, pretty chalky, coming in almost 10%. This is a pretty good matchup here, 5-on-5. It's a good power play matchup if the Blues take penalties. They don't really take a bunch. But, like I always say with the Blues, if they take the penalty, they have trouble killing it. I just don't have any interest in the Blues here tonight. We'll just get that out of the way. I'll say one off Buchnevich is fine, one off Kyrou is fine, but not interested in anything else in the Blues. I do have interest in Toronto 1 here at their price, at their ownership. They are fully correlated. Even Nyes, with the power play time now, has been playing 18, 19 minutes a game. If you're looking for a pivot off the super chalky Penguins, you can play chalky Leafs. I'm fine with it. The second line it kind of feels like you're chasing points a little bit, but like they've been very good the past few games at 15-7. I think they're fine. I prefer Toronto 1 here. It's not really close, and the Blues suck.
Yeah, I don't have interest in that Buchnevich Jake Neighbors line. That's probably just a pass for me. Kyrou and Schenn is kind of interesting. Like you and I are not big Braden Schenn fans here on this podcast, videocast, whatever you want to call it. But I was looking at some of the tracking data to start the season from them. And with Robert Thomas hurt, you can make a good argument that the two best players in transition, at least so far this season, for the Blues have been both Schenn and Kyrou. And they're both playing on the same line. I'm not super concerned about Toronto defensively at 5-on-5. Toronto's also taking a ton of penalties. They're at 4 times shorthanded per game this season. It's the 4th highest penalty rate in the league. St. Louis has actually been generating more shots without Robert Thomas. Now, St. Louis did shake up the power play. They moved Schenn to the second unit and added Philip Broberg. I'm not really a big fan of taking almost any forward off a power play for a defenseman. So you get less power play correlation. That kind of sucks. Like a Schenn Kyrou 2-man, something like that is something I would have kind of interest in. If you need to go super cheap for one reason or another, like a Holloway Schenn 2-man is like a little over 8K. Like I think you can get away with that. I would almost certainly include Kyrou in any sort of St. Louis stack that I make. They are kind of interesting to me just because Toronto is taking so many penalties. Buchnevich and Neighbors, you get 2 guys on the top power play unit, but I just don't think they're going to be a very good line. Their numbers historically together are not good whenever they don't have Kyrou or Thomas with them, but they're not. St. Louis isn't a priority for me in any sense. It is the Toronto side I do like a lot better here. As you mentioned, they're coming in much lower ownership than Pittsburgh is, 12.6% ownership at 19,700. I was looking at, speaking of high danger shots, now you would expect Austin Matthews to be at the top of the Toronto board when you're looking at high danger shots per minute. He's not quite there. If you look at their forwards, with at least 100 minutes played. Number 1 is John Tavares, which I don't think is a surprise because Tavares has actually played well to start the season. Number 2 is Matthew Nyes. Nyes has been really, really good to start this season. And as we talk about, they're perfectly correlated now on the power play. St. Louis doesn't take a ton of penalties. Their penalty kill isn't very good, though. I wonder if, maybe I hate Narrative Street. Do the Leafs play a little bit harder for Berube in his return to St. Louis or something like that? I mean, I don't know. But that Toronto top line, 19.8 high danger shots per 60 minutes of 5-on-5. It's like 70% higher than league average. They're just running, skating circles around the opponent. It'd probably be the better metaphor here. But I really do like Toronto 1. It's the one reason why I'm not super gung-ho on Pittsburgh. It's because I think the Toronto top line is just a much better line. They're also perfectly correlated. They're also going to play a lot of minutes, and I think they're not in as good of a matchup as Pittsburgh, but it is a good matchup regardless. So I really do like Toronto 1. If you want to dip down to Toronto 2, I even think going down to Toronto 2 is fine. I know there are some minutes concerns, but they're also priced at $15,700. Ownership is under 10%, still a 7.5% top 2 stack. Tavares and Pacioretty, small sample, but have been really good so far this season. They have double the high danger shots of their opponent when they're on the ice together. If you need to save money, if you're going with a couple mid-price stacks, I think Toronto 2 is just fine. But it is Toronto 1 that I'm particularly targeting here because they're fully correlated and they just have a sample of pretty much beating the piss out of the opponent game in and game out.
Yeah, for sure. Let's get to I think this is the most interesting game on the slate. Colorado Avalanche with a 3 total. Heading into Nashville, the Predators have a 3.4. Arturi Lehkonen is close, but he's still out. He'll be back on Tuesday, they said. So the Avs are running back McKinnon, Rantanen, Kiviranta, Middlestad, Ivan, and Logan O'Connor. Ivan, all the way up to 2,900. Kiviranta all the way up to 2,700. Fun stuff. It's a pretty good power play matchup for the Avs here. I don't know if I want to pay 21.8 for the full top line, especially where Kiviranta is now on the power play.
I can feel the vitriol just falling out of your mouth as you say his name.
I don't think you need and I know someone would be like, we need to just take Kiviranta off and put Ivan on. You could do that, and that's fine. But McKinnon Rantanen as a 2-man is so expensive. I don't think you need both of them. I think you could do McKinnon, Middlestad, Ivan, something like that. If you want to do something crazy and go McKinnon, Rantanen, Makar, that's super expensive and it'll probably be fairly unique. I think that's fine. Ivan will probably be the highest owned of the Colorado guys because he does get top power play time. He did score. He had a shot bonus and he played 18 minutes and he's up to, 2,900. I think if anything on the Colorado side, it'd be some sort of power play stack. We saw against the Lightning that, man, they're just all these injuries are catching up to them defensively. Now it was Capo Kakinen in net. It doesn't really matter if it's Georgiev. It doesn't matter if it's Justice and Newen. The goaltending has been awful. For that reason, I prefer the Nashville side. It would be that top line: Forsberg, Marchessault, O'Reilly, 18,600, 16.4% top 2 stack, 12.5% projected ownership. This team, Colorado's just a shell of what they could be when they start getting healthy. I'm in on Nashville 1. Not so much on Nashville 2. One off Stamkos is fine, but I don't want to pay. They're coming in with 9% projected ownership, and Brunette always mixes up the second, third, and fourth line. So it would be Nashville 1 for me. On the Colorado side, it would be some sort of power play stack.
Yeah, You said it's one of the most interesting games. I think this could also be one of the more frustrating games just because it does feel like one of those games where we should see a lot of goals, right? Even with all of Colorado's injuries, they've still Colorado has had all their injuries the entire season. They've still managed some pretty big games, right? So it's not like Nashville has been great defensively so far this season. Like you were mentioning their penalty kill so far this season is it's been good, but it's also been good because their goaltending has given them 951 save percentage, which is obscenely high. Like one of those things that's going to regress pretty hard. When that does, the goals are going to start flying in on the PK. Nashville doesn't take a ton of penalties. I do like Colorado in a nutshell here. I'm going to be honest. I think I like the Nashville side a little bit better. Nashville, and one of the big reasons why, there's two reasons. One, I don't think people are really noticing that Nathan MacKinnon's shots per game is down and his shots per minute is down quite a bit from last year. And that's a concern, right? Because this is a guy who gets a lot of his DFS value from being able to consistently put up those shot bonuses. He's at 3.5 shots per game this season. His shot rate is down 25%. It's a lot. And he's 10K tonight, right? Other than Rantanen, he's the only player above 9K, or Matthews, sorry. Matthews, MacKinnon, and Rantanen. I just think it's a lot to pay for a guy that's if Matthews was landing 4.8 shots per game or something like that, I would have a lot more interest. But he hasn't been shooting the puck a lot. He's been doing well, but 3.5 shots per game, considering he's been playing 22 minutes a night for Nathan MacKinnon, really isn't a lot. I think it tells you how much trouble Colorado has had trouble generating at times, even though they have certainly had big games. I was also looking at the numbers without Ross Colton or Casey Middlestad on the top line. 10.4 high danger shots per 60, which is below league average. Not a big sample. It's 60 minutes, but it's not great. I honestly do think I prefer the Nashville side here. Marchessault and Ryan O'Reilly, 16.6 high danger shots per 60 together so far this season. You want to talk about shooting the puck. Philip Forsberg is the guy shooting the puck a ton so far this year. He's at 4.6 shots per game. I think he's had a DK shot bonus in half his game so far. We know how much trouble the Colorado goaltending has largely had this season, even though Justice Aintonen's had a few good games. The Nashville power play has been pretty good. They haven't even scored as much as they probably should be, and they've still been good. So I really do like Nashville 1 here. They're coming in with 12.5% ownership, 16.4% top 2 stack, 18.6K. I think I would play them over Toronto 1, but those are the two lines in that 18 to 20K range that I'm really considering here tonight. I have them above even Ottawa, but it's Nashville 1 for me that I like most in this game. I'm never going to say no, don't play Colorado. Nathan MacKinnon and Mikko Rantanen can shred just about anybody on any given night. I just think given the shot rates and those high prices, I'd rather save a little bit of money and just go to the Nashville side. We'll talk about defensemen later. I almost think I even like playing just a solo Cale Makar better than I do stacking anything from Colorado. So Nashville 1, Nashville 2. I think Stamkos makes a fine one-off because he is shooting a ton on the power play. Not so much a 5-on-5, but on the power play especially. There is a world where he scores on the power play, maybe gets an assist at 5-on-5, has a couple shots, just has a big night like that. So I think, one-off Stamkos is fine, but it's really Nashville 1 that's catching my attention here. They are one of the stacks that I'm considering for single entry.
Same. There's just a lot that I like on the slate because there's a lot of bad teams. Utah, the Soakers, 2.8 total. Heading into Sin City, the Golden Knights have a 3.6 total. Vegas has the third highest total on the slate, and you're getting no ownership. Well, the top line anyway. Eichel, Stone, Barbashev, 21,400, 12.2% top two, 2.8% ownership projection. They just aren't good 5-on-5 for a top line. They just aren't creating much. And they ran super hot shooting percentage-wise to start this season. I don't particularly love them at their price. I'd rather play Pittsburgh. I'd rather play Nashville. I'd rather play Ottawa. I'd rather play Vancouver. I'd rather play Toronto. You know what I mean? So, like, they would be a contrarian spend-up option for me in MME. If I did end up playing Vegas, it would be Hurdledorf, of Howden at 13-1, 2.5%. Excuse me, top two stack, 5% projected ownership. That's a little bit of negative leverage. That doesn't really bother me. If you want to make it into a power play stack that's more expensive, leave off Howden, add in Eichel, something like that. This is a very good power play spot. So I think, kind of like how I'm attacking Colorado, it would be some sort of power play stack for Vegas. And I think, you just kind of go to that second line because they're cheaper. You get two guys on the top power play unit, and then you add accordingly. On the Utah side, I don't particularly love this matchup for them. I just don't particularly love these lines. Like, it would be Cooley, Genther, Keller. There isn't, none of these Vegas lines are elite defensively, but again, they have the lowest road total on the slate. They're 17-6. At that point, I'd rather just go play Ottawa or drop down a little bit and, play Detroit, or if Zucker's on the top line, play Buffalo, you know what I mean? So, then you're just kind of meh, it's kind of an MME play for me. I wish Bukestad, Krause, and Michelli were together. That's a line I'd love to play, but Kerfoot doesn't do too much for me, so I'm pretty much out on the Soakers.
Yeah, I think here's my problem with Utah tonight is that a lot of their value so far this season has come on the power play, which that's perfectly fine. Yeah, it's a being able to score on the power play is very important for DFS, but half of Dylan Genther's points have come on the power play, right? That's kind of what I'm talking about here. Nick Schmaltz, 3 out of his 11 points have come on the power play. This isn't necessarily a good power play spot. The Vegas PK itself isn't great. They're not taking any penalties. They're at 3.1 or 2.1 times shorthanded per game. Sorry. That's tied for the second lowest in the league. Only the Islanders are taking fewer penalties per game. So if Utah only gets a couple power plays here, it really puts the onus on that top unit to do something significant with those minutes, especially for DFS. And, Genther and Keller have been pretty good together this season at 5-on-5. That is the one saving grace. With Genther and Keller on the ice, 74 shot attempts, which is really good. 6.1 goals per 60, shooting 22%, but even half that, they'd be at 3 goals per 60, which is just fine. But honestly, I just don't think it's for single entry. It's just not a good enough power play spot. And I see 17,600 for that Utah line. I'd rather go play Nashville. I'd honestly rather go play Ottawa. Certainly Toronto. They're all coming in with higher ownership, but even Ottawa is not coming in with that much, the Ottawa top line, that much higher ownership. They're under 5% projected ownership, and Utah's under 2%. That's not enough of a difference for me. Ottawa's in a better power play spot, and they're at home, versus Utah in a worse power play spot and on the road. So that's just kind of the way I look at it. So I personally don't have a lot of interest in stacking Utah here tonight. I'm never going to say no to a one-off Keller, one-off Genther, one-off loss of Krause, those types of things. I think full stacking is kind of out for me tonight on the Utah side. The Vegas side is very interesting to me. Our old buddy Pavel Dorofeyev has been really, really good to start this season. He's been a big part of why the Vegas power play has looked so good. He has 3 power play goals in 11 games. He's been getting, obviously with that power play, he's been getting more ice time, like 17 to 18 minutes pretty consistently of late. Him and Hurdle on that second line haven't been generating that well. But Utah has not been that good this season at 5-on-5. I think that's one thing that's been kind of overlooked about this team, is that they have been giving up their chances defensively at 5-on-5 so far this season. I think they're about middle in the league by high danger shots, about the middle of the league by high danger shots against on the penalty kill, not at 5-on-5. So that's why I do kind of like that Vegas second line. You get Hurdle and Dorofeyev on the power play. They're reasonably cheap. Like you said, they're coming in with some ownership, but it's nothing that excessive. 13,100, 2.5% top 2 stack, 5% ownership. So yeah, I do like Vegas 2 here tonight. I'm never going to say no to playing Vegas 1. They do get ice time. The one thing that concerns me is, well, 2 things concern me. One, the top line is still shooting like 21% of 5-on-5. Like half that rate would be a really, really high conversion percentage. The other is Jack Eichel isn't shooting. His shot rate is down 30% from last year. It's been kind of the same thing as Nathan McKinnon right now. It hasn't really mattered so far this season because they have been shooting 22%. So when you're shooting that high, it doesn't really matter that you're not scoring a ton. But Eichel only has 26 shots in 11 games. Like, this was a guy that's like at times is at like 4 shots per game, and right now he's under 2.5. It's just not enough. And Stone's not a big shooter. Barbashev's not a big shooter. You're really, really, really relying on them shooting 20% or whatever. I just can't get there. I think I would rather go to Vegas 2. So Vegas 2 is really the only line that I have a lot of interest in stacking tonight.
We are on the same page. I'm still mad about Kiviranta.
I can tell.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Vancouver Canucks with a 3.9 total heading into San Jose. The Sharks have a 2.5. Some news in that game. Jake Wallman off the top power play. Timothy Liljegren running the top power play for the Sharks. He is min price. It is the worst penalty or power play matchup in the history of power play. No, I mean, it's a brutal power play matchup. Vancouver has an elite penalty kill. It's unfortunate because I'm a Liljegren guy. I am a Wallman guy also, so I'm kind of conflicted here. But this matchup, it doesn't really matter for the special teams. Vancouver has a very, very good penalty kill. And I was expecting higher ownership here on Vancouver, if we were being honest. I guess most of it went to Pittsburgh, and I guess deservedly so. But you're going to give me Miller, Besser, and DeBrusk at $16K at 11.3% projected. In this matchup, I'll just say thank you. I guess you could leave DeBrusk off and add on Garland or add on Pettersson because it's an elite power play matchup. I don't particularly love Pettersson, Garland, or Steve Baines at 12.6. I understand their price, and you get 2 to 3 guys on the top power play unit, but their top stack is 3.4%, and they're getting 12.5% projected ownership. At that point, I'd rather just go to Miller, Besser, DeBrusk, or just make some sort of power play stack, right? That's probably how I would do it for Van. On the Sharks side, the Sharks top line is more expensive than the Vancouver top line here. That makes it very hard to play the Sharks top line here. They've been playing well, but in no universe will I lock in the Sharks top line and not play the Vancouver top line before them, right? You know what I mean? So I have Vancouver rated way above the Sharks top line here. So you can play him in MME, get your little bit of Granlund to fully Ekholm. Granlund's so expensive now. And that's becoming an issue. So they're fine in MME, but this is a Vancouver game for me.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of interest in San Jose. As you mentioned, it's not a good power play spot. And, speaking of teams that have thrived on the power play so far this season, like San Jose has definitely been one of them. Over half of Michael Granlund's points have come on the power play, 7 out of 13. So, yes, they have been very reliant on power play production. Vancouver doesn't take a ton of penalties. They're about league average at 3.1 power play opportunities given per game. It's just when they're on the PK. Fewest shot attempts against per 60, third fewest shots against per 60. Bottom 10 or top 10, however you want to look at it, for goals against per 60. They just have a really, really, really good penalty kill. And, it's not like Florida last year where Florida was taking like 4 penalties per game or something like that. Like Vancouver's just not taking a ton of penalties either. So it's not a good power play matchup. And if it's not a good power play matchup, it's probably a pass for me. It is the Vancouver side I'm more interested in. It is the DeBrusk line, DeBrusk, Besser, Miller line. I don't know why I call it the DeBrusk line. It's certainly not his line, but Miller, Besser, DeBrusk that I have interest in. I don't have a lot of interest in the Pettersson, Garland, Baines line. One, I just don't think Archie Baines should be in the Vancouver top 6. The other is, we mentioned a couple shows ago, I'm pretty sure Elias Pettersson is playing hurt. Looked at the NHL Edge data, which looks at the skating metrics for players across the league. All of Pettersson's skating metrics are down pretty significantly from last year. And the example we brought up was Mitch Marner playing injured last year. All of his skating metrics were way down, and come to find out he was playing injured for much of the season. Pettersson talked about the offseason, the knee tendonitis he had towards the end of the year last year. Talked about having to change up his training. Said he was fine. I'm assuming he's lying, as athletes do, about injuries. So, and when you look at like I said, the skating data, it just shows that he's just not the same player that he was last season. Something like, I think it's 29 points in his last 42 games now, going back to the All-Star break last year. That's under a 60-point pace over a full season. The fact that he's probably playing through a knee problem is definitely showing. So it's Miller, DeBrusk, and Besser for me. So far this season, they're at 20.9 high danger shots per 60. It's only been 50 minutes together, so not a high sample, but Miller and Besser can typically carry just about anybody as the third wheel. Not coming in with a ton of ownership. They are one of the over-leveraged lines, so higher ownership than top 2 stack that I do like here tonight. It is a great power play spot for Vancouver. San Jose is the second most penalized team in the NHL. They've given up 10 power play goals against in 12 games. Vancouver's power play has suffered a little bit. I think part of it is just related to Pettersson, but if you give them 5 power plays, I think that, there's a decent chance that they break through. And that Miller line is just really good at 5-on-5. So it's really only the Miller line I have a ton of interest in. If you want to go to the Vancouver depth here, because you're making a super expensive Colorado stack or something like that, that Bluger, Sherwood, Heinen tier, I think is fine. I think they can run over San Jose. It is one of the spots where I wouldn't mind looking at a third line if I'm paying up for Colorado, but it is really the Vancouver line that I have the most interest in this game by a wide margin.
Yeah, I agree. That is the 7 games. Again, if you're looking to go premium, you can click the link in the chat. Use promo code Stochastic15. That'll get you 15% off your first week or month of your premium subscription. Also, if you're looking to get back in the premium NFL streets, you can use promo code MILL, MILL. That will get you 30% off any NFL membership. Got a nice slate this weekend, so hop on that. Jump on it. Defenseman. Top of the board, Makar, Yossi, Hughes, Sanderson, Montour, Matheson, Sergachev, Theodore, Dahlin. I honestly, I'll usually say, if you can spend up for Makar, I play him. This is a great, great spot for Makar. He's just playing a ton of minutes. You need the offense from him for Colorado to have a chance. I think Makar, Yossi, Hughes would be 1, 2, 3 for me. I also like Montour. Shea Theodore. I think Rasmus Dahlin at 5,900 is definitely playable as well. Who you liking in that top range?
Yeah, I have Yossi at the very top, McCarr just behind him. I also have Quinn Hughes there. We're not usually big Quinn Hughes guys because he doesn't shoot a ton, has been shooting to start the season. And like we just talked about, it's a great power play spot for Vancouver. So don't mind Hughes, especially where that Vancouver line's not that expensive. So it's not an expensive 4-man stack to add in Hughes. In the mid price range, like Rasmus Dahlin at the top for any defenseman under 6K for me. Erik Karlsson not far behind, just because it is a pretty good matchup at home for Pittsburgh. But I imagine he will be chalky. Morgan Riley, I think now that he's getting his power play time back, is certainly playable against St. Louis, although I'm not specifically targeting him. Thomas Chabot has been getting some good minutes for Ottawa, and he's probably going to be lower owned than Jake Sanderson. I don't mind Chabot, especially if you're making a bunch of lineups, but in that mid-price range, it's really Dahlin and Erik Karlsson that I have the most interest in. Looking for cheap defensemen, as you mentioned, like Timothy Liljegren, 2,500. It's not a good power play spot, but the guy's $2,500 on DraftKings running the power play for San Jose. Matt Grzelcyk was moved to the top power play unit for Pittsburgh, and he's under 3K on DraftKings tonight as well. So, I don't like 3 forward, 2 defenseman power plays, but if one of them's going to be under 3K on DraftKings, I don't hate it. Alex Carrier might have to block a lot of shots at home tonight against Colorado. Philip Broberg, he's a little bit more expensive, but he's fine. 3,200 top power play minutes now for the St. Louis Blues as well. Riker Evans, even with Montour back, like Evans might be number 2 in ice time still. If you're looking for a guy that might get hit with 6 pucks here tonight, it's David Savard, 3,900. I know, he's not playing a ton of minutes game in and game out, but he's been back over 20 minutes 4 out of his last 5 games. In that span, he has 17 blocks. So 17 blocks in his last 5 games. And Pittsburgh is one of the shot happiest teams in the league. So, if you can get that block bonus, maybe he donks an assist, then you're kind of rolling. Simon Edvinsson for Detroit. He's been getting a lot of minutes. He's been blocking shots, might have to block a lot of shots. He's kind of like a David Savard light in that he, been blocking a lot of shots, but I do think there's a little bit more offensive upside to him in his matchup.
Yeah, and just a quick note on Chabot. The Rangers Sens game yesterday did not go to overtime. He played over 26 minutes. So do whatever you want with that information. That is a lot of minutes. Let's talk about goalies. I don't like a single goaltender here tonight. If I had to choose, I think I would go to the Toronto game and roster Woll. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, I'm okay with at 7,400. Maybe Connor Ingram at 7,100 if you want to get scary. But I don't particularly love any goalie option here tonight.
I think Cam Talbot's fine. I know it's Detroit at 8K. Here's the thing. He's probably going to have to see a lot of volume because Detroit's just not been able to drive the play whatsoever. So at least he's in a home matchup and should see a lot of volume. You like Wall. I like the other side of that game. I don't mind Binnington here just because Toronto does shoot a ton and St. Louis doesn't take a ton of penalties. He could get lit up, could let in 6 goals. That's kind of the problem when you're facing the Toronto Maple Leafs, but as long as he lets in 3 or fewer, I think he could be fine. I'll mention Joey Decord. It is Joey Decord starting tonight for
I don't
Seattle.
know. They
haven't announced anything. If Decord is starting, I don't mind Seattle at home or on the road to Ottawa. Ottawa, if their power play doesn't score, can have trouble scoring at 5-on-5. So as long as as it's Decord starting, I don't mind him. If you need a super cheap goalie, I suspect Montreal's going to get lit up here tonight. But if you do need a cheap goalie that's going to see a ton of volume, it's Sam Montembeault.
Yeah. And you know how I joke about like someone power bombing Mitch Marner at center ice? There is a non-zero chance that if Bennington gets lit up, he will power bomb Mitch Marner at center ice. He would be the guy to do it.
Yeah. If there is a goal, if there's a goalie in the NHL that would do it, it's him. I was going to say Askarov. I don't think Askarov in the AHL is nearly as feisty. I think he's just more of a charismatic guy.
Yeah, they should probably call him up. He has given up like 1 goal so far this season. But anyway, I digress. Who are you looking for your hat trick pick?
I mean, I'm going to assume that Pittsburgh kind of steamrolls Montreal here tonight. I'm going to go with old Dickie Raquel.
We usually refer to Cole Caulfield as little boy goals. There is another little boy that I'm interested in, and that is Connor Garland.
There's a little boy you're interested in, is there?
I'll let you guys use your imagination, you sick fucks. But we will be back on Tuesday, a couple of much-needed days off, especially after that segment. We were here every day this week. Congrats to you guys for watching us. No, I'm just kidding. I appreciate you guys tuning in with us. There's over 300 of you guys here spending your Saturday afternoon with us. I truly do appreciate it. Good luck, everybody, tonight, and we'll see you on Tuesday.
Good luck. See you Tuesday.